Welcome to the Condé Nast Traveller Dine Drink Festival, a special event where we are chatting with the best in the business about all things food. The last few years have changed where we eat, how we eat, what we eat. And one of the people leading this change is with me here today. I am Salil Deshpande, Deputy Editor at Condé Nast Traveller India, and with me is Chef Thomas Zacharias, who has been championing the cause of regional Indian cuisine. For years, Thomas led the kitchen at the excellent Bombay Canteen in Mumbai, and then last year he quit. Thomas, welcome to the CNT Dine Drink Festival. We're all very, very curious to know, what have you been up to?
Thanks, Salil, for having me, and I'm really excited as well. It's actually been almost a year since I've left the Bombay Canteen, and actually this is the first time I've gotten time off like this in, I think, more than a decade. Because the little time I do get away from my work as a chef, I travel to somewhere to explore and grow as a chef. But stepping away from the kitchen has allowed me the peace and quiet to just be. And more importantly, it's given me the space to kind of think and explore beyond the confines of the kitchen. I think it's really broadened my perspective and even my creative energy in a lot of ways, which I never imagined it would.
Right. You had a great thing going at the Bombay Canteen, Thomas. Why did you move on?
We always tend to hold on to things that are great in a way that doesn't allow us to look beyond that. I've been cooking professionally for almost 13 years, and the last 7 of those years have been focused on celebrating regional Indian food and championing local seasonal ingredients. And I'm really, really proud of what we've achieved through the Bombay Canteen, and that's something that will always be special to me. But I think having traveled to India for the last 7 years, I've had first-hand experience witnessing different issues within our Indian food system, things like food equity, food waste, how our food choices affect our own bodies and the planet. And there's so much you see and experience when you travel that I just couldn't turn a blind eye to it anymore. And as a chef inside a kitchen, there's only so much impact I was able to make. So I wanted to challenge myself to get out of the kitchen and see how I can personally bring people together to enable an intervention and hopefully contribute to making positive change on the ground.
And it's been nearly a year since then. How has the experience been? Is it disorienting? Is it liberating? It's a completely different thing being out of a very, very structured setup that you're used to in the kitchen, right?
For me personally, it's been extremely liberating. I think the last year has brought me so much perspective, but also a lot of joy in being able to do a lot of the things that I couldn't get to do before that. I think the concept of just taking a sabbatical from your career for a few months is so highly underrated, and short holidays just don't cut it. They just don't have the same effect.
Right. So tell us, let's just go back to the kitchen for a bit and tell us, what is it really like to work in the kitchen? The best parts, of course, the stuff that we all see, but also the worst parts, the stuff that people don't always talk about.
Salil, when I was 16, trying to decide whether I wanted to become a chef, most of the advice I got from industry insiders was to say that it's a tough line of work, highly stressful, long work hours, it's exhausting, there's poor pay, etc., etc. And a lot of those stereotypes are true. You have to be able to suffer through a lot of that because it really isn't easy, and it doesn't get a whole lot easier with time either. But if creating food and feeding people is what excites you, which is what made it for me, that it kind of makes you wake up every morning and look forward to your day, and then there's nothing quite like it. It's a really, really rewarding profession and a career to be in. So it really depends which side of the scale you're on, and that's what determines whether you take away the best of it or the worst of it.
Right. Everyone talks about bad days and good days, and everyone talks about, the highs and lows. What does a bad day in the kitchen really look like?
There are many, many things that can go wrong, which can really take a toll on you, either on a daily basis or with time. I mean, on a daily basis, it could be a disgruntled customer. It could be a conflict of some sort within the team. It could be like bad quality produce coming in. It could be an entire dinner service gone bad. Someone getting hurt, for example. The power could go off, which it has in multiple occasions. And that kind of throws everything into a whirlwind. And it really doesn't take a lot. And some of those things happen practically every day on a day-to-day basis. So it's a highly volatile work environment, and you have to kind of be able to thrive in it to be happy doing what you do.
Okay. And again, it seems like a very, very stressful setup. And of course, you're creating all of these experiences outside of the kitchen life, or the experience is very different. But the kitchen itself seems to be a place with a lot of stress. It is, of course, a team game, as we are constantly told. But for a chef at the top of his game, does it really become lonely at the top?
Well, I think it's lonely if you allow it to be. Chefs are typically people who wear their heart on their sleeve, and when you put in so much heart into the work in a way that defines your identity, egos come into play too. So, but if you're open to camaraderie, there's a lot to be had. It's almost like we're part of this secret underground club, a different species, so to speak, from the rest of the world. And it's really hard to explain, but we chefs get each other. So it's easy to find comfort in friendships around. You just have to be able to look for it.
And I mean, you said egos, but you also said that, chefs really have to get along. But at the top, can chefs really be friends?
I think absolutely. And I have a lot of chef friends in the community, not just within Bombay, but across the world. I mean, I think absolutely chefs can be friends. We just have to kind of be real and honest with each other and with ourselves.
How do you stay sane through all of this? Because different people have different levels of thresholds of stress and expectations. How do you do it?
I think the short answer is that you don't stay sane. But I mean, jokes aside, if you're someone who aspires for greatness in the industry, you have to watch out for yourself in the process. And that means being conscious and mindful about not just the external challenges you face, but the internal ones as well. And it's really, really important. I can't say this enough. It's really, really important to seek help whenever you can. And that can mean reaching out to colleagues, friends in the industry, superiors within the workplace, friends and family, just seeking out for help, sometimes even professional help. I mean, I decided to go for professional counseling very late in my career, but it did wonders for me.
It's interesting and also very, shall I say, bold of you to actually say that, because not many people do. Do you want to tell us more about this particular phase?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think I went through certain phases where, and this is, I mean, in the last few years where I want to say it wasn't just that the pressure was a lot, but also I was going through different highs and lows in terms of my creative outflow. And because I'm so driven and I hold myself to such a high standard that I was hard on myself. So I needed to kind of get someone else to kind of tell me and explain to me and get me to realize that what I was doing wasn't really healthy for myself, and I needed to see it more clearly. And that's what professional help from the outside did for me.
Right. Today, the game has changed dramatically, right? It's not just about how you perform in the kitchen, but also how you, in a sense, perform for Instagram or for social media. Is that really the case? And has that changed how chefs think, what chefs create, and just how they operate?
Yeah, I think if anything, social media has really changed this profession for the better. We've always been a breed that has kind of lurked in the shadows. Growing up, I didn't really know that chefs even existed because they were always behind closed doors. And to go from there to now having the opportunity to drive the way people eat through the things you champion is just extraordinary. I mean, and I never really take that for granted. The pressure to perform, especially for an audience, has always been there. And I guess, in a way, you need to pick your own battles and be true and honest to yourself before anyone or anything else. A lot of the chefs today tend to cook to show off, and that's a dangerous road to go down, in my opinion.
What would that mean? It is a performance art in a sense, is it not? Cooking is a performance art at a certain level.
It is, but I mean, at least the way I see it, food, especially whether it's served in a restaurant or in someone's home, is something that kind of nourishes the soul. It's something that it's supposed to be delicious. It's supposed to leave the person who's eating it satiated, happy, with a smile on their face. And when you lose sight of that, when you lose sight of the fact that you're feeding to kind of satisfy someone, as opposed to feeding to kind of satisfy your ego, they're two different things. And that's kind of what I mean.
Right. Let me come at that question at that point from a different angle. Do you think it's important for a chef today to be media savvy or social media savvy?
I think it definitely helps to be media savvy. I think in a way, we are artists, we are craftsmen, and we have a story to tell. We have a voice, we have a vision, and it's important to use that story and that voice and that vision to connect with your audience in a way that we never could before. And so I think rather than seeing it as a challenge, I see it as an opportunity to connect, an opportunity to really get your message out there. Whereas, like back in the day before social media, a lot of what you're trying to do gets lost in translation with just people not understanding what you're trying to do.
Right. Thomas, let's talk about since we're on social media, Thomas, let's talk about Chef on the Road, right? COTR, as most people know it by now. This is a series, or this is a project, if we may call it, where you travel across the country and you try out a whole bunch of these very, very local experiences. A lot of it is incredibly regional. I mean, all of it is regional. A lot of it is incredibly niche. You have managed to unearth some of these experiences that we've not, come across. Most of us have not come across. There's a lot of it that plays out on social media. Tell us more about COTR, and tell us also about the bits that we actually don't see on Instagram.
So, what it started off as to what has become now is something I've never really imagined. I didn't start doing this for it to become popular or to create engagement. In fact, I still don't see it like that. For me, these trips have always been the sole ways for me to educate myself continuously about what's happening in different parts of the food system, expose myself to new and unique ingredients and dishes and techniques and stories, and meet passionate, inspiring people I can learn and grow from. I just happen to share it with the world. The bits that you see on Instagram are almost always just the good bits. And it's only people who've traveled with me who really know the challenges that come with it, the struggles, the heartbreak. It's a mixed bag. I mean, I think the positives you see on Instagram are about 60% of it. And the remaining 40% is like just pain mostly. And it's exhausting. I mean, this last Chef on the Road trip that I did through Goa, to the layperson on social media following me would have come across like it lasted a month, but it's actually 9 days. So that's just like how intense the trip it is. But it's really rewarding. It's something that I really cherish. I know that it's become kind of like a brand on its own, and I'm really grateful for it. But for me, it's again all about the travel itself and connecting with the people. What's on social media is just a way for me to kind of find an outlet to express that.
Right, you mentioned heartbreaks and pain. It seems like fun and games, right? I mean, you get into a nice car, you have friends, you're going out, eating, trying local food. It's the idea of the perfect experience that we think about, but it's difficult.
It is difficult, and I mean, what I mean by heartbreaks and pain is that, like, I mean, I'm extremely organized and meticulous about how I plan these trips. And I usually do it to the T, but I still leave some amount of room for chance. I mean, you got to leave that 20% of room in your itinerary for magic to happen, and usually it does. But for the stuff that I've really planned out, every now and then on every trip, at least 2 or 3 of those either don't work out, they don't go according to plan, or they're disappointing. I do a lot of research. I try and understand what might bring value to me as a chef who's traveling, and a lot of it is based on my gut instinct. So I think 80% of the time I get the gut instinct right, and the remaining 20% when I don't, and it ends up being a really disappointing experience, is when the heartbreak and the pain, because that my time on, like, if it's 9 days and I'm packing in all these experiences, like each one of those is really valuable.
And then we see all of those experiences, but how do you process all of that information and all of those experiences when you come back?
Me documenting it on Instagram was my way of processing it. In fact, the reason why I started posting on Instagram, and I did this, like, say 8 years ago on my first trip across Europe, where I traveled through 36 towns and cities in France, Italy, and Spain. I did this when I had, like, just a couple of thousand followers. So it wasn't to kind of like share it with like a whole bunch of people. It was my way of documenting it so that I could use it as an archive to keep going back. And that's why you see those long drawn out captions where I'm explaining it meticulously and like in depth. It's my way of archiving. And actually the hashtag, I started the hashtag because it was easier for me to kind of go back and search for it. So hence COTR Goa would be, I can just search for COTR Goa and all the posts will kind of show up. Yeah.
It's been phenomenal. I think those experiences, Uttarakhand in particular, but Goa also. You've got some terrific experiences out there. So, well done to you and your team. Let's talk about the Indian food movement. You've been championing, Indian food movement for years now. Where do you think it is right now? And is there an end goal or a point at which you can say, we have made it?
So just like Chef on the Road, the Indian food movement is just something I coined 4 to 5 years ago. I remember sitting on one of the tables at the Bombay canteen with somebody at work and just saying, I need to define the essence of what I want to do personally through my work, which is essentially to work towards building a better future of food together rather than silos. I realized that, it wasn't something I could or wanted to do alone. And it's never really been about an end goal. That would be naive or utopian to think that. I think it's basically a journey forward, and that's enough to keep me going. To be honest, while there's a lot of awareness in this respect, it's still a very minuscule audience that I've been addressing. And the biggest progress I think I've made is to inspire the next generation of chefs, like students in hotel management colleges. And I've seen that transition over the last 5 to 7 years, in the way they respond in my interactions with them, when I visit colleges and things like that. And that's really kind of rewarding to see. But beyond that, there's not really a lot of impact beyond that awareness that has been generated.
Do you see a particular stage or do you see a particular event at which point you can say that the Indian food movement is finally broken out of its own shell?
So that's exactly what I'm focusing on now. That's exactly what I've taken the time out to figure out what's next for me. I want to kind of transition the Indian food movement into something that is just about awareness to something that translates to impact on the ground. And for me, that means gathering an entire community of like-minded people and getting people to actually drive change on the ground.
Okay, and what kind of change specifically are you looking at?
It could be anything. I just think that food is an amazing vehicle to get people to think differently, act differently. We make so many choices within our day-to-day lives centered around food, in where we buy our food from, and that again extends to where that food comes from, what's gone into it, who's growing our food, how much they're being compensated for it, how is that community that's growing the food supported. Then once we bought that food, how are we processing it? Are we paying homage to certain regional cuisine heritage? A lot of our traditions are on the verge of getting lost with this generation. So what are we doing to preserve it? And it's something that I've kind of addressed through the Bombay canteen, but again, limited audience. And then what are we doing with the food after that? Are we wasting it? Are we being wasteful? Are we? So there's so many different parts to it that, it's a lot to kind of tackle, but I want to do it one step at a time. And just kind of break this divide that exists between all these incredible people and organizations out there who are actually driving change, but who don't really have an audience or a voice with the final consumer. So there's this real bubble which consumers live in, and they don't know what's happening on the ground. They don't know where their food comes from. They don't know the implications of their food choices, and I want to kind of narrow that divide in some way.
Right, and the fine dining experience is that entry point into this entire world of provenance and understanding the culture, the provenance, and everything else.
It is, but like I said before, it's a limited audience, right? Like, I mean, you're restricted to the few hundred people that are eating at a restaurant every day. Those same 100 people, I mean, you might capture their attention while they're at your restaurant, but the rest of the time when they're home and they're anywhere else, they're not thinking about the same things that you're talking about. And even if they're thinking about it, they're not really making any active changes around it. So I think, I mean, there are some deep-rooted problems that we have around the world in the context of food, and it's time that, like, I mean, we work towards addressing some of those. I'm hopeful of a future where more people care about our food choices and the impact it has than less. Right now, if like, it's almost hipster to be thinking about sustainability and thinking about organic, but that's really strange because, I mean, it's something that really affects all of us.
Right. And where do you think innovation comes or figures in the scheme of things?
I think innovation is really, really important because, like I spoke about narrowing the divide between the do-gooders, so to speak, and the end consumer. I think we have to get creative around how to get more people into the fold. Like, I think what we did at the Bombay Canteen is a great example, because if we'd just done traditional region Indian food from around the world, I mean, from around the country, people would have just like kind of turned the other way. But we did food that was exciting, that was fun, that was hip, that was cool, that was almost aspirational in a way, but it was still very rooted in tradition. So we found that fine line between the two, which really clicked with people, and it kind of got people got them to pay attention, and then it took off from there. And then I essentially got an audience that pretty much paid heed to what I had to say.
Thomas, if you don't mind me asking, we're talking of innovation and we're talking of Indian food and regional food. Where do you think India's street food culture figures in the scheme of things?
I think, I mean, Salil, I've been, like I said, I've now been to about 23 states in India for food exploration. There's an incredible, like, diversity of tradition, of technique, which I've not seen anywhere else in the world. I mean, I've traveled like across Europe. I've been to Japan. I've been to the US. I've been in the Middle East, and we always, as a kind of culture, we in India, we always kind of get so enamored by foreign cuisines, as even within the chef community. We're so, like, we see a trend catching on abroad, and it suddenly becomes, the next dalgona coffee or avocado or quinoa, right? So many incredible things that are happening in the world of food in India, which have been a part of our heritage for a really, really long time. And that includes within the realm of Indian street food as well. I mean, everybody, for example, when they think of chaat, they think of like 5 different types of chaat, but everywhere you go, particularly within the north, you see an entire spectrum of it. I mean, in the south, I did a whole trip around Tamil Nadu, and they have, for example, one of my favorite dishes is omelette called kalaki, which is literally an omelette that's made in 10 to 15 seconds. So it's actually runny in the center, and it's just and I've never seen the technique. I have not seen the technique anywhere in the world. Like, everyone talks about French omelette, nobody talks about kalaki. So there's, and everywhere you go, I mean, people often ask me, like, which part of the country or which state or which region were you most excited about? But the thing is that, like, no matter where I go, I mean, as long as I can find the right people to connect with and the right resources, I've found no dearth of incredible richness of food in India. And that for me is like the really exciting part. I mean, I know that I can continue to travel and absorb for the rest of my life and still be blown away every single time.
That is wonderful. So on that cue, would you like to tell us what's next?
I'm taking a break from cooking in restaurants, from being a chef, but not to be an Instagram influencer. I'm taking a break to actually focus on connecting with people. Like for the last year, apart from the 2 Chef trips, I've met a lot of farmers and producers from across the country. I've been interacting with them, trying to understand how I can kind of intervene within those systems and make a difference. For example, there's so much greenwashing that happens in India. I mean, the words like organic and natural are thrown around, but people don't really know what they mean or the implications of what that means. I mean, everybody sees sustainability as either black or white, but it's actually a lot of gray. There's just because you buy and eat something that's labeled organic doesn't mean it's the best thing to really support. It's way more nuanced than that, and that nuance is something that people aren't exposed to. And I have a hypothesis that people innately want to eat better, want to do better, want to live better. But in the context of food, it's just something that either they are living in a bubble, they don't have the exposure to it, or they're intimidated by the idea of it, or they think it's expensive. So I'm trying to see how I can disrupt that in a way that's still approachable, that's still fun, and that's kind of what I'm working on next, which you'll hear about soon.
Very, very curious, of course. All of us are, and also curious, I'm sure everyone who's listening is of course your advice for anyone who wants to get into the kitchen.
If you're deciding whether to become a chef, I think make sure you're making an informed decision. And the best way to do that is to try and get your foot in the door of a professional kitchen. Talk to chefs or restaurateurs within your home city. Try and intern for at least a week and see what it's like. And this is the advice I give anybody who reaches out to me personally as well. Once you do get in though, and once you do decide to take the plunge and become a chef, whether that means, going and doing a culinary course or plunging yourself directly into the industry and working, just make wise, long-sighted career choices that will allow you to sustain yourself over the years. There's this kind of trend within the industry where young cooks try and climb up to the top really, really quick. And they basically fall for the temptations of the quick growth, but basically you'll end up being a chef with no gravitas or longevity if you rise to the top without gaining the skills, knowledge, and experience. So, yeah, make wise, informed choices and be patient.
That's great advice. Thomas, thank you very much for your time and all those insights. We cannot wait to see what you do next.
Thank you so much, Salil. It's been a pleasure.
Pleasure. So if you enjoyed this conversation, please share it on your newsfeed. There's a lot more at the CNT Dine Drink Festival. Please follow us on @CNT Traveller India on Instagram and Facebook, and @CNT India on Twitter. Stay safe and eat well.